Troll Nation, welcome back to Telesplash Gaming, and I'm pumped because today is the first video in my newest playlist, A Troll Through the Past, where I pick out a retro game, talk about what it was like when it came out, whether it was good then, whether it's good now, and whether it's worth playing. And to start it off, I'm going back to '89 when a little system called the Turbografx 16, also known as the PC Engine, was released, and with it a pack-in game called Keith Courage in Alpha Zones. So stick around and let's get right into it. So in order to take you guys through this game, I have to give you a little backstory on how I even found it in the first place. When I was a kid, I ran across the street like many kids did, one of the neighbor's house. My best friends, Felicia and Buddy at the time, grew up there, still great friends to this day. And I went downstairs because their mom had a new boyfriend. And he was playing this alien system I'd never seen before. I'd seen Ataris. I'd seen Nintendo. I'm not even sure I'd seen a Genesis yet if it had been released, but I think I knew what a Genesis was, but I'd never seen this NEC Turbografx 16. And he was playing a game that looked really cool. You were a kid, you were turning into a mech type of a warrior, and you had a sword that grew as you progressed through the game, and that's all I could remember. Well, 15 years later, I finally asked my friends, hey, do you remember what game that was? And we could never figure it out. Until lo and behold, one day on YouTube, I was scrolling through some pack-in games, and boom, Keith Courage in Alpha Zones popped up, and that's what made me reminisce about this game. So, Keith Courage in Alpha Zones. When you think of pack-in games, what do you think of? Sonic the Hedgehog for the Genesis. You know, Altered Beast before that for the Genesis. Super Mario for the Nintendo. Super Mario World for the SNES. You know, Ridge Racer for PlayStation. But everybody forgets about the Turbografx 16, a system that really was a decent system, but didn't really get the hype that the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, and the Nintendo before it got. It was the first 16-bit system, but it actually had an 8-bit CPU. So they considered it like a 16-bit era, but it was an 8-bit CPU. It competed mainly with the Super Nintendo and the Genesis at that time. Released in 1989, Keith Courage in the Alpha Zones was published by Hudson Soft and NEC, and you remember Hudson Soft because Hudson Soft is known for Adventure Island, Bomberman, and Excitebike, to name a few of their many games. But in 2012, Hudson Soft did close their doors completely and merge with our good friends over at Konami. So, what is Keith Courage in Alpha Zones? Well, it started off as an anime in Japan, where it was a fairly huge hit, and we call it Spirit Hero Wataru. That's what they call it over here in the States. There it has its kind of different translation, but it was a popular anime series that they brought over to the States in the pack-in game. Why? If you aren't a fan of anime back then, and really anime was still kind of in its early stages of making its way over the US in terms of kind of mainstream, why would you put a pack-in game that really didn't have any relation to anything we knew over here? And because of that, this game really didn't sell well. In this, you take over as the protagonist, Keith Courage, after Earth has been struck by a huge meteor carrying inhabitants from a different planet called Bad. I'm not joking. The name is Bad, but it stands for Beastly Alien Dudes. Okay, I know we had some crappy writing back in the day, but they couldn't have come up with something better. I mean, I don't even know if this is like the Japanese translation. If that's the case, I'll let it pass, but I'm pretty sure this was like an English translation. They just made it up. So you're fighting against these aliens from the planet Bad who are here to take over Earth. And you're a member of NICE, Nations of International Citizens of Earth. Yeah, I know, these acronyms are terrible. And you are tasked with defeating Bad. So you're nice, trying to take out Bad. Anyway, you'll never hear that again, and you pretty much have to go on Wikipedia to really hear the backstory in the first place. You are armed with just a sword and some guts and glory, my friend, as you take out guards and monsters, and there's 7 different levels called Alpha Zones, and that's where you want to progress to. You're trying to get the 7th level of the Alpha Zone. There's 2 different levels per level, an overworld and an underworld. And the overworld is freaking boring. You're Keith Courage, you're a little freaking nerd. You walk around, you avoid some animals, you know, or monsters, and there's little shopkeepers. You have 4 friends in the world. But you know, I love how in these games you have these people that want to help you save the world. The world's on the verge of collapse. We want to help you. So we're going to sell you all the tools you need. Can't you just give them to them? I mean, if you're going to die in a few days, wouldn't it be better just to give the swords and the bombs and the health to the only hero that's actually standing up to fight for you? Anyway, It's a video game thing that's happened for years and it's not going to change. But much like Zelda and many other games, you collect these coins, these rupees as you defeat monsters, and you go in through these overworld shops, say hi to your friends, and they sell you health, they sell you bombs, which you can use in the underworld, and they sell you an upgrade to your sword, which is only usable again in the underworld in terms of the upgrades. So you go through the overworld, pretty basic, and then the underworld is where things really take a nice fun turn. You get to take off as the overpowered Nova suit. Once you're in the Nova suit, you feel like you've just literally played a completely different game. It feels like you pop the game out and you put a new one in and you're playing a new game, because the overworld and the underworld are so different. In this one, your movement is so much faster. As Keith Courage, you're literally walking at a snail's pace. You feel completely unathletic. But in the Nova suit, oh no, you're juiced up. You're TRT. You're on roid rage. You are flying around. The movement's awesome. The slashing is super crisp. I mean, you feel overpowered. Enemies barely touch you. They can barely hurt you. They hit you a million times, you don't die. So you feel super overpowered in the Nova suit, at least in the beginning. Progressing through, first couple levels were really cool. You fight through the overworld, you collect coins, each different level has a different sword upgrade, so your sword gets longer and longer, which was kind of what I was talking about as a kid that I didn't quite understand. So as you get better swords in the underworld, your sword grows, so you have more range, maybe a little more power. I don't know if it makes a difference in power, but I know the range is better. And at the end of the underworld, there's always a boss fight. So that's actually kind of cool. A la Castlevania, a la many other games like Contra, a boss fight at the end of this side-scrolling adventure. So, where does the game go wrong? Well, the first couple levels aren't so bad. You know, the overworld's boring, but at least you can deal with it. The underworld is actually really fun. It's exciting. It's actually the best part of the entire game. But by level 3 or so, you start to have to farm coins. It gets really repetitive, so you can upgrade your armor, get these bombs, get your health back, maybe get some more hearts added on. And then level 3 boss is a little more difficult. It's the first time you actually feel a little bit vulnerable in your suit. Level 4, the boss is really annoying, and if you don't have full health, you're pretty much screwed. So your Nova suit goes from being overpowered to being underpowered, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. By level 5, the repetitiveness of the game has literally gone full force. The overworld is completely boring, nothing changes. They add a little lava here and there, so you have to take damage, so you have to make sure you have health. The enemies aren't any different, your friends don't change. Actually, because of inflation, the prices have gone up in the overworld stores for everything, which sucks. They added every man's favorite level. They added ice to one of the levels, so you're sliding all over in the overworld. I mean, it's one of those things like, hey, we had the same level for 7 levels in a row. What should we do? Put some lava in there. And then the next guy, hey, throw a little ice in there. We'll mix it up. And that's kind of what they did. So by stage 5, it's super repetitive. And then stage 5's boss is pretty tough, because now you fight 2 bosses in stage 5 that were previously on other stages. So again, they repackage the bosses and put them at the end. Not terrible, but not great. So you move on to level 6. Level 6, the overworld has a million doors to go in, but it's the same crap. You're buying stuff. The underworld, same thing. Boss gets pretty tough. By then, you're not feeling powerful at all. You're getting completely wrecked by these bosses. And frankly, if you don't have a full health bar and you haven't memorized their pattern, you're going to be going through a ton of continues. And then level 7 happens. Level 7 was super easy. The last game, the Alpha Zone, the bad headquarters, you go through the overworld, simple. You go to the underworld, pretty simple, except when you get to the boss. And if you don't have the pattern down, you are toast. It took me a ton of time, even with the pattern being down, because I just kept dying and dying and dying. And your Nova suit is terrible. You might as well take your Samus, strip her down, and let her run in there and fight the boss, because you are completely underpowered in your Nova suit. Once you get the pattern down, it's not terrible, but it's just one of those things where, okay, instead of making good gameplay, let's just make a really repetitive pattern and make the boss really tough. So with that, that's the end. You beat it, you saved the world, la-di-da-di-da, the world is a better place. So what is it about Keith Courage? You know, I've kind of talked trash about it. I didn't say many good things. This is what I have to say. The first few levels are fun. The overworld's pretty boring, but once you get to the underworld, it really changes the pace up for you and actually makes it pretty entertaining. And it's pretty fun to play in that Nova suit. The problem is, it doesn't change. From level 1, 2, and 3 to 4, 5, and 6, just the landscape changes a little, but the objective's the same, the enemies are the same, your weapon is pretty much the same, you got your little bullets from your bombs, and you got your sword, and that's it. There's no different, major enemies. The enemies even keep reappearing throughout the levels. The bosses are the only kind of difference between level to level where it makes a difference, but by the end you're so bored and you're so underpowered in the Nova suit, it's ridiculous. You go from being super powered to literally being underpowered. You go from being the Hulk to being Bruce Banner, you feel like, by the end of the game. And usually it's the opposite. Usually you start off as Bruce Banner and you progress to the Hulk where you're overpowered at the end of the game. But not in this one. So with that, what were some of the review scores? Well, IGN gave it like a 5.5 out of 10. Honest Gamers gave it 2 out of 5. And so what do I think about those scores? Do I think they were, do I think that's too good of a score for what it is now? Do I think it's about right? Do I think it's better? I think it's about right. In this instance, this game really was mediocre at best. It just wasn't fantastic. It's one where I'd recommend popping in and playing it a little bit to get the feel, but there's no reason to go through the level and beat it. Check it out, go through the overworld, get your coins, get your sword upgrade, and feel the power of the Nova suit, and say you played it, but it's not one that I'd recommend putting a bunch of time into. I beat it in about an hour and a half, and the worst part was my capture card didn't capture all the footage, so I'm using World of Long Plays for the footage, but that's okay. At the end of the day, I beat the game. I itched that nostalgic feeling I had for years and years to finally say that I saw this game again and I was able to beat it. So, Keith Courage and Alpha Zones, a troll for the past. Let me know what games you think about when it comes to being a kid and your nostalgia. Maybe a game that you saw as a kid that took you years and years to find again. For me, this was the big one. It was like on my mind for a long time, and finally I found it. And I was a little bit disappointed. But that's okay. That's why I made this playlist a troll to the past, so I can check out some of these classic games, whether they're good or not, and feel what it used to be like to be a nerd back in the 80s and 90s.